can tiptoe through your life. Digging in the dirt, you can stress on the strife. But I'm gonna fly past the worry and the pain today. I'm flying on faith. Flying on faith. I'm flying on faith. Faith. You could cry all night about the things that you hate. So dissatisfied in so many ways. But I'm gonna find a way to celebrate today. I'm flying on faith. Flying on faith. I'm flying on faith. Flying on faith. Picked up my baggage and I threw it out the door.
Good morning, and welcome to Be Radiant, where we offer you opportunity and authentic community to build and empower you to live a radiant life full of hope and love. With that in mind, we will bring you relevant information each week to equip you to live your best life. And we believe here that in his presence is fullness of joy, and at his right hand are pleasures forevermore. And with that in mind, we believe that you can live a radiant life. So let's go. Let's go. Let's get into his presence and get some practical tips on how to live a radiant life. With that in mind, today we have Susan Smith. She is a financial professional with the Coastal Financial Group here in Savannah, Georgia, which is a part of the Thrivent company, a financial services organization. And we want Susan to come on and talk to us today about the wealth gap. What is it? What can we do about it? What does it look like? Because we hear it, but do we really understand it? So let's bring Susan in. Good morning, Susan. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Great. Welcome back. Welcome back, my friend. We had you in the room last month for financial, Financial Health Month, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had an opportunity to talk about
wellness.
Yeah, it was Financial Wellness Month. So we brought some information through Susan that was so good. You know, just doing that look back, Susan. I think that's the thing that I heard the most, that people were doing that financial look back. Can you just talk about that for a second? I know I didn't tell you that, but let's talk about that for a second, just to refresh those who may be in the room today that didn't hear it.
Yeah, so I encourage, not just my clients or, members that work with me. I encourage anyone, whether you have a financial advisor or not, to take a look back at the last 3 to 6 months of your spending. It is a history lesson because we can't do anything to fix what we've already done. However, we can use that to inform ourselves and be more intentional about how we spend in the future. And so looking back at what your giving looked like, your needs and your wants, because I find that wants more often than not is what is the spending plan buster. It can completely wreck your spending plan or budget. Many people will call it, but I don't like using the word budget. But yeah, that is what you want to do.
Yeah, I call it a spending plan. It feels a little bit better to me when I think about, I get to spend some money.
That intentionality around spending, everything about money is it's more a mindset. It's less what so many people think it is when you're thinking about money. It's the mindset that we have about money is what causes us to spend a certain way.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Which kind of brings us to our topic today. There is a wealth gap that exists in the United States. It's actually not just a United States problem, but it's a global problem. The wealth gap that does exist. Can you kind of give us an understanding or a definition for that term wealth gap?
Yeah. So in the easiest terms, because there is a difference between wealth and income. So wealth is the assets you have after, all of your expenses and liabilities. It's, your home, it's vehicles, it's savings, it's investments, it's all of those pieces put together, versus income.
Mhm.
And while some people may have a high income, possibly, the majority of the nation, let's just talk about the US here, but the majority of the nation, they are not wealthy.
Mm.
When we truly think in terms of the assets that we have in place.
Mhm.
And wealth is something that is passed on from generation to generation. So if
Wow.
you think about income can't be passed on.
Right.
Because typically income is being used for the month-to-month, day-to-day expenses. So
Mm.
wealth is what's above and beyond that.
Wow. That's good information to have, because I think a lot of times people get into high paying jobs and they begin to live a certain lifestyle feeling like they're wealthy, but
Yes.
they're not actually building wealth.
Yes.
Wow. So I'm putting that in. Wealth is the ability to pass things from one generation to the next. That's a really good point to put in there. So with that being said, what are some factors that are driving the wealth gap? When we said you just gave us the definition of wealth. So what is the wealth gap? What are we seeing as a disparity?
So some of the disparities are just living wages in general.
Mhm.
But more important, as a piece of that, how we save, how we invest,
Mhm.
in what areas we invest the money that we have. And I would say further, one of the biggest keys is being able to pass on, what we accumulate. That's one of the biggest things that creates disparity. So I find that one area that could affect that is life insurance.
Okay.
I mean, no one wants to think about dying, but we are 100% guaranteed to pass at some point. It's going to happen to everyone. That's the one thing that's sure.
Yes.
And so with that in mind, we have to prepare.
Mm.
It's about knowing better and then doing better with what you know. So part of what I say about spending plans is when you're writing stuff down and you're figuring out how you're going to spend what the income that you're bringing in. But if all you're doing it is writing it down and not actually acting on what you've written down, that's as good as what you can use to start a fire.
Ugh.
And that's it. It's not going to do anything else for you.
Yeah, that is extremely painful to hear, because so many of us can identify with those good intentions, of, okay, I'm going to write it down. I'm going to begin to keep track of what I'm spending. But it's not so much just keeping track of what you're spending, but it's making a plan for how you will spend.
Yes, intentionality.
Yeah, huge
Yeah.
difference, huge difference.
Um,
Go ahead.
I was going to say I was on a call earlier this week, and there was a graphic that showed the scale of intent versus impact. And it's like when I saw that, we were talking about something, completely different, somewhat related to finance, but completely different. But I see so many things through the lens of finance.
Mhm.
And I said, wow, that is exactly what a spending plan is. You have the intent, to do this great thing. But if you're not acting on that good intention, your
Mhm.
impact is nowhere near what you're wanting it to be. You miss the mark.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So.
Absolutely. Well, Susan, you just mentioned insurance. And in our conversation, you've talked about when that ability to pass things down from one generation to another. Insurance is one of those things, but also looking at real estate, things that are permanent. And what are some things that you see people spending their money on that increases the wealth gap rather than closes it? Because we know now wealth is assets. There are tangible assets that can be passed on, things that can be left when you're gone. Like you said, if I have a six-figure income, it's not like my daughter is going to be able to go step into my job and start, with that six-figure income. But
Right.
if I leave her real estate, if I leave a nice life insurance policy, it sets her up to move forward with it gives her a good start, a great intentionality, and all of those things. So what are some things you see people spending money on that's increasing rather than closing the gap?
Oh, goodness. Luxury vehicles, leasing luxury vehicles, and I am not of the school of thought that a lease vehicle is the best choice.
Mm-hmm.
However, sometimes it might make sense in someone's financial situation. But things like that is you have clothes, jewelry, purses, especially purses and shoes. Oh my goodness.
Mm-hmm.
I can say that for many years, when it came to clothes, shoes, things like that, I purchased a lot of things. However, those things typically did not come straight off of a, first wear rack and things like that. I grew up not thinking about labels and not, recognizing that that's something, that was a thing, I guess. I saw other kids and other teenagers with labels on, and, it was all that. That was never my thing. Wearing good quality clothing, not that I'm saying hand-me-downs are the thing. New clothes are great. Everybody wants to have that. But don't do that and sacrifice your retirement. Pouring money into things that are going to degrade, that you can't sell or can't pass on to the next generation. Let's do things different.
Wow. I like that. I like that. So that is one area that we see that people have this mentality, and it's a mindset, like you said, where you may have grown up without those things in your life. And so now that you are in a better paying job, you want to appear to have all of the bells and whistles. And so it's that keeping up with the Joneses mentality.
And that can even, when we talk about the real gap, that's also purchasing more home than you can afford. So, the first time home buyer, there's, just you think historically, there's redlining, there's just predatory lending that happens, subprime mortgages, all sorts of things that are, beginning to adjust. And, we're kind of being more informed. Realtors are much more informed now about the ways and means to help people be the best stewards of, their finances as they're looking at mortgage loans and things like that. Not to say that predatory lending and stuff isn't still out there, because it is, but that's why you have to be self-informed. You have to do your research.
Right.
And unfortunately, more times than not, if credit scores and things are not where they need to be, you're almost at the mercy of a lending company because you don't have as many options.
Okay.
And so being more intentional about your finance, and yes, mistakes happen. Oftentimes you will see people do things and it's like that stays with you, you know? And so those are the things that just continue to widen the gap.
Okay.
Because you can't out earn when it comes to wealth. You can't earn your way to wealth.
Wow.
So you have to find other ways, multiple streams of income.
Yes.
Those are the things. I know we're now getting into what can close the gap, but yes.
That's fine. That's fine. So what I've heard thus far is that there's a misunderstanding of what wealth is. That's part of the wealth gap problem. Then you just mentioned about the fact that we're not educated. A lot of people, myself included, I had to scrape to find places to get that education from, but we're not educated on financial matters such as purchasing homes. We may get into a place where we're taken advantage of when we're in the housing market if we don't understand ourselves what that looks like. Another thing is the misconception that the appearance of wealth means we're wealthy. What are a couple of other things that that attribute to the wealth gap?
Well, generational wealth being passed on, or the lack of that, I will say, more times than not. And I obviously can only speak to the African American experience. But if you look historically, and I will talk specifically about my why, why I do what I do other than serving to bring honor and glory to God. So in past that and providing for my family, my why comes from my dad. He was a business owner for over 6 decades. And I recall looking at his books. I mean, you're talking millions of dollars over time for a man that was born in 1936. High school education. Wow. That was it.
Wow.
But between equipment and paying employees, all of those things, at the end of the day, there was a life insurance policy that was enough to bury him and a little bit beyond that.
Wow.
And I know there had to be people in his path throughout those 6 decades that could have imparted knowledge to him, to say to him, Mr. Gladney, you're doing a great job, but here's what I see could be different. Or, this is what I see that, maybe you want to consider this.
Wow.
And so that way there would have been legacy.
Yes.
And he did not leave debts. So it's nothing like that. It wasn't debt. So in some cases, not only is wealth generation or wealth transfer not happening, you have debts that are, lingering after someone passes.
Absolutely.
So you're not even able to grieve the way you wish to grieve. But you're also worried about, this other piece that's still lingering after someone is gone. Yeah. So he did not leave debts in his stead, but you would have to imagine if he had done things maybe a little bit different or known better. Because it was not for lack of love of his family. Absolutely not. But if you don't know what you don't know, you can't fix it.
That's it.
So you had life insurance agents that oftentimes would go out and they're, offering and selling these burial policies because they feel like this is all they can afford. But when you have a conversation with someone and you find out what their goals, their dreams, their aspirations are for themselves, for the future, 9 times out of 10, people will find a way for an expense.
Yes.
A life insurance policy is an investment in yourself and in the future. It's showing your love, for those that are coming after you. That's what a life insurance policy does. It's a love note.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that concept. I have posted in the comments different ways to get in touch with Susan because what she just said, it resonates. It is a love note to your family that I care just as much about you after I leave here. I want to make sure you are set and that things are well with you. So stop looking for the trappings. Like you said, you can find the money. It could be in, doing what I'm doing right now, Susan. Instead of going to Starbucks, just make your own coffee.
Yeah.
Make your own cup of coffee, and the money you would have spent on Starbucks, that money could go towards a decent insurance policy.
Yes. And
it's not huge to do. And Susan just said it, sitting down, having a conversation about your goals. What do you want to do? How do you want to leave here? And a lot of people are afraid of that. But like you said, that if there's nothing sure in life, what did they say? Taxes and death.
Exactly.
Those are the two things that you can count on happening in a lifetime. Well, Susan, when we were talking earlier as well, we touched on something, especially this is Black History Month, and African-American families. As we were talking, we recognized that, we could even mention the names of someone that was in this situation. There is this school to prison pipeline that has affected not only the lack of financial education, but the fact that there's a earner that is no longer in place. Talk about that a little bit.
Yep. So a lot of people focus on just the fact that our young Black men, young Black boys are being disproportionately incarcerated. And that is an absolute reality. There are statistics. I won't go into that because that is not my expertise. But in discussing with those that follow that process and look at those percentages day in and day out, the reality is we are disproportionately incarcerated. And so when that happens, that young man that could go on to be, a high income earner, or even if it's, going into a trade, ends up putting people in some pretty high, tax brackets when it comes to earnings. But that's not going to happen because a charge of some sort that would have only, resulted in parole or probation or something, ends up being several years out of society. And there's no process in place really for reintegrating. And so there's this issue where if a child has a learning disability, or there is, maybe something that's lacking in learning, there's less of a focus around, okay, how do we figure out, how to teach this student, And I know that there's so many things that's weighing on educators. I get that. And it's very difficult to customize education for each student. But having family members that are advocating for your students, if you recognize that something is wrong, or that just there's a question about something, you have to ask questions.
Absolutely.
because otherwise it could put them in a place where they're just headed towards a different path.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And when we think about even how life insurance plays a role in that, so not only is that income not there because the person is incarcerated, but if they pass or when they pass, that's yet another bulk of wealth that is not being transferred.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mhm. Absolutely. That's so good. I know I was listening to a TED Talk a few days ago by Michael Jr. He is a prominent comedian, and he said that for years growing up, he really could not read. And no one recognized it, or at least no one sought to assist him with that this learning disability. Thankfully, he began to find ways to cope with it and adjust, and has gone on to be, you know, a man who is well known, well respected, and he speaks too about that, making sure that we are watching our children and helping them with those, because it's hard to talk about transference of wealth when you can't even get someone into an income producing job,
Right.
because of disabilities that happen and no one assisted. And you're right. Our educators are taxed. They are overtaxed. They are overwhelmed sometimes, especially right now. But I also have to stop and say, as an educator, I've been in the school system. It is imperative that we pull away and begin to recognize who is in our classrooms, what's going on with them, because their future depends on it. So I do recognize that, but I also know we have a responsibility, Susan, and that's everyone in our lives. Parents, be an advocate for your children. Educators, stand up and say it when you see it. So we're looking at several things that are causing the wealth gap. Now, can you give us, just before we close, a few tips and maybe even one good thing to help turn this wealth gap around?
Yeah. So education is the primary foremost piece that will shift the wealth gap. And I know it's something that is said so often. When you know better, you do better. It's really that simple, though. When you know better, you do better. And it's like, if you continue to hear that thing that you need to hear, sometimes it's hard to talk about finances. And I even had to learn, before becoming licensed and things like that, I would say, especially here in the South, I would say things like talking about your finances and being open about that it's usually not something that people do, at least in our community. And so
I have to say this, Susan, things like that. It's I've heard my mama say it when she was alive. She said, that's not something you talk about in polite company. I was like, what is polite company? But it's just things that you don't talk about to other people. You just, if you're scraping by, you've got to look as though you're not scraping by. So yeah.
But it's like, it's I think there's the saying that all ships rise with the tide. And so when we think about transparency, when you are going through something and you have come through something, even if your experience is different from someone else's, or the cause of it, the root is different from someone else's, but they're going through the same thing. When you share that, it opens up that opportunity to make someone think, well, someone else has gone through this and they made it through. Now, how they did it may not work for you. So it doesn't have to be me that people seek out. Um, However, you want to seek guidance from wise counsel. You
Absolutely.
need to do that. And so whether it's a financial coach that you work with, many of them do things like offering financial education workshops. I offer financial education workshops. It's one of the ways that I choose and am able to give back, because I see the fact that everything that I'm given, it's not something I earned. It was given to me by God. And so if I have the ability to impart knowledge to help people make even one change to something they're doing and make a difference in their life or someone else that they care about, then I've done my job.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I have your information up here on the screen. If you say, hey, Susan, I heard you say you're offering some financial education classes or opportunities. I'd like to get in on that and hear about it. Then just go ahead, go on to, her email address is susan.smith@thrivent.com. And you can also go on to, connect.thrivent.com/Susan-Smith. And that will give you all of her contact information so that you can reach out to her, because this is important. It is important that we begin as a community. And like I said, one of my interests, and also Susan's, was in this month, this Black History Month, where we're bringing and elevating the history of Black people, showing, first of all, that we are capable of doing amazing things. And some of our ancestors have made huge impacts in this country and how it moved forward. The unfortunate thing is, a lot of times they were not allowed to build wealth and pass it on. We have an opportunity to do that. We can stop that that school to prison pipeline. We can intervene in the life of a young person. We have the ability now to be able to go out and purchase a home so that we can pass it on. We can choose not to go out and purchase that vehicle that costs $700 a month and possibly get one that costs $350 a month, and then put the rest of it in investments or in life insurance policies. We have better choices that we can make. And so get with her, find out how you can move forward in leaving a legacy. Go ahead, Susan.
I want to add just a couple of other points. So the last time I was here, I talked a little bit about multiple streams of income. And so another way of closing that wealth gap is entrepreneurship.
Yes.
And entrepreneurship puts our society in a place where the talents and creativity can flourish.
Yes.
There's a place for everyone, because the way you do business, the way you operate is completely different, and it's unique in this world. And so not only taking ownership of that, but also recognizing and being confident in the fact that you can bring something to the table.
Absolutely.
So that's a huge piece. And I would say knowing how to do that is more important than anything else. So just, jumping out and doing something that you're passionate about. There's a difference between a hobby and having a business. And so doing things, my dad would always say, doing things decent and in order.
Yes.
Would always talk about that. But you want to make sure that you have your ducks in a row. And when you do that, you can take part in things like, throughout this pandemic, the fact that there have been funds available. Now there's debate as to whether or not those funds were divvied the way they should have been, you know,
Mhm.
but that's a topic for a different day, and it's not for me to talk about. However, there are more times than not situations where entrepreneurs don't have everything together in order to qualify for
Mm.
a lot of the services that are out there. So getting with, you know, groups like SCORE Savannah has some amazing mentors and programs and things there. The, you know, Small Business Association here in Savannah, or if you're watching from another city, there's typically going to be a small business association, chamber of commerce, minority chambers of commerce that can, you know, share knowledge. So that knowledge is where the power is.
Absolutely. And
And
there's
buying from those smaller businesses, you know, if you can, before you go to some large, you know, company, see how you can do that.
absolutely. I know too, a lot of those services are free of charge. You just have to find them. Here in Savannah on Gwinnett, is Gwinnett Street, is it, or Avenue? Gwinnett Street.
Gwinnett Street.
Yeah, there is actually an organization there that is a nonprofit that assists with helping to incubate and give that small business education to you. But it's on Gwinnett Street, and it's, I think it's called the Small Business. Oh goodness. Oh, I'm gonna have to get that. And when I get it, I will put it in the comments. Sorry about that, but I know that they give you that information. They help you start put together a business plan. They help you to kind of hone your ideas in so that you can be productive, like you said, and take it from a hobby to an actual income producing venture. So absolutely, those opportunities exist out there. I just want to say that entrepreneurship, that is something that a lot of people don't recognize. A lot of them are doing things every day for free, Susan. Like you said, they have giftings and special talents, and they're giving it away for free. And just learning how to monetize those things can be the difference between leaving a legacy and leaving debt.
Yes, yes. And I will say, I have definitely seen or noticed that throughout 2020 and now moving forward, that is something that many people have realized. And, you know, in some cases forced to see what other streams of income they could, you know, bring in. So, but, you know, out of that pain, there's birth of, there's growth, you know, and so I'm very happy to see stuff like that happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So seek out those opportunities for free education, and then possibly find out how you can get education. It may cost you a little bit, but you're worth it. Invest in yourself. Invest in yourself. Absolutely. Yeah. Invest in your family's future. There's so much more that we can say on this topic. I tell you, I'm looking at the notes here. Allyship, finding people who have already been there, and you know, mentorship, being good stewards of what you have. So I have a feeling that we're going to see you again in the future, just to talk more about our financial peace, our financial education, and getting ourselves into the right place so that we are an asset to our family and not a liability. I like to, and I wanted to say, you mentioned about the CARES Act money, that there are a lot of small businesses that have access to money that they don't even realize. If you are in Savannah, I know specifically there's a second round of CARES Act money right now. So if you have a small business and you're not sure of how to go about filling out the application, get with someone now. Susan, is that something that you have information or knowledge about, or could at least direct them to the right place?
Yes, I can. There are things that I know as far as the ins and outs of the second round and the qualifications for it. The Small Business Association can be a great resource because all of the money from that standpoint is kind of filtering through them. You know, those applications are coming or going to them, even if you're going to your local bank branch. And I would say even your bank, whoever you bank with, oftentimes will at least have information that they can provide to you. They may not be able to help you walk through all the paperwork and everything that you need to have in place, but they have literature that you can at least start with.
Yes.
Yeah.
So don't miss out. If you right now are operating a small business, take advantage of those the extra. It's not even really extra. It's assistance to help you keep moving forward. So
and a lot the parameters have changed from that first wave. So, you know, that's an important thing to know. But that just again goes back to operating in excellence with your business and making sure you have all of your documentation, you know, from beginning to end. If you start the right way, then, you know, you're not having to scramble when opportunities like this come up. So
absolutely. So Susan, I just thank you so much for coming by and talking to us today. And you are welcome here anytime to talk to us. Good morning, Melanie, one of our dear friends, your heart-to-heart sister.
Yes.
Oh man, so we are definitely wanting to make sure, get in touch with Susan. If you have a small business, talk with her, set up an appointment, a consultation, so that she can begin to give you some information on how to build a legacy, how to build wealth. Don't be the one who says, yeah, it sounds good. Be the one who says, I am going to be excellent in my business, in my handling of my finances, so that my children will have a better legacy. Thank you so much. And I always ask this question in closing, and I know you've answered it for us, but maybe there's something different going on now. And that question is, what are you doing right now that causes you to find joy in the journey and causes you to live a radiant life?
So the answer is it's still the same. I would say being able to walk up my faith in service to others, that is what brings me joy. As a financial professional, I would say this is not the easiest path because of the stigma that can sometimes center around life insurance and financial advisors and things like that. And it's history. You know, people have been burned in the past, and so there's a distrust there, largely. But I would say that relationships make all the difference.
Yes.
You know, when you get to know the person that you're working with, or you're referred to them because they did work for someone else, good work for someone else, and you know that person wants them to share. So being able to serve others is what brings me joy. My family, you know, first and foremost, they as far as earthly things, they bring me joy. And so from a how to be radiant standpoint, right now, you know, trying to get City Shapers up and off the ground here in Savannah. That's what's making me live a radiant life right now, and you know, trying to figure out how to make that happen.
Well, now, you know, I got to tell us a little bit about City Shapers. What is that? What are you talking about?
Yeah, so City Shapers, it is a 2-year cohort that is designed to bring change makers such as yourself and so many others that, you know, watch this segment from all different industries, all different walks of life here in Savannah. And the goal is to focus on a specific area or neighborhood of Savannah, and utilizing all of those change makers to collaborate and to truly work together to see how, based on the issues or concerns in that area, whether it's income and business or blight, maybe it's, access to healthy foods, but bringing all of those people together to change that area, to improve that area, and then move on to another area of Savannah. And so we're able to come together and do that. Savannah would look completely different.
Yes.
And it can look completely different. So
absolutely. It can be, this is a great city. I'm so glad to have transplanted here.
Yeah.
But we know that there are areas where, even what we're talking about today, where the wealth gap exists, and being able to go in and say, what is it that you as a neighborhood, what do you feel needs to happen here? And how can we be the true change makers that we say we are to help bring those things in? But it's going to be the people that live there that really make the biggest
bring the change. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So thank you for that. I appreciate the fact that you are working so diligently to be a part of change, to be a part of decreasing the wealth gap, to be a part of making sure that families have that financial education that they need. And Susan, thank you so much for giving us your time today. And like I said, guys, reach out to her, get some of this information one-on-one, and you will not regret it at all. Yeah. You'll see her again. You'll see her again on down the line. So if there are questions that you have, please reach out to Susan. And thank you again so much, Susan, for your time this morning.
Thank you for having me.
All right. All right. Well, we've learned a lot today about the wealth gap. We've learned a lot today about reasons that it exists. If you are in a situation right now where you are looking and you are saying, Valerie, I have a nice house, I have a nice car, I have nice clothes, nice shoes, but I have nothing that I can really and truly pass on to the next generation. I need to speak with Susan. Reach out to her. Let her know there's nothing to be ashamed about. The shame is staying in the same situation. But deliverance comes and we learn better. Like she says, when we know better, it's time to do better. So I just want to say thank you to Susan again. You guys have a great day. Make sure that you are living a radiant life. And here we come in to help build and to empower you to live a radiant life. So have a great day. Walk in all the knowledge of who you are and all the knowledge of who God is. So great day. Be radiant. Be the light.